in the bag, ideas to flow. Steph and Joe are on the go, go, go. Sharing what we know, from the classroom to the show. It's Steph and Joe on the go. Innovation, education, moving fast with dedication. Come along, let's start the flow. It's Steph and Joe on the go.
Hello, everyone. Joe, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing so good, Steph. How are you doing today?
I am doing good. It's, wrapping down the year, which is crazy. We're almost to 2025.
I can't believe it. I have to tell you, the way the beginning of this year started off, I was like, oh my goodness, this year cannot end fast enough. But I have to tell you, these last few months have been phenomenal. The end of 2024 has been really great. So I'm really excited to see what 2025 brings.
Yeah, for sure. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think a lot of listeners struggle with, or you kind of learn over time how to deal with it. Don't you think?
Yes, that's very true. I mean, it's something that it takes many years working with people to be able to gain this experience, this skill.
Yeah, because I know earlier in my career, I wanted the spotlight. I wanted to be the center of attention. I wanted to get credit for all of my work. And now that I've, been in education for 11 years, I'm kind of like, let's make it a team thing, right? Like let's work together. Let's get everybody's idea. I've learned that the room is a lot stronger than when it's just me solo.
No, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, shoot, I would have to say, back in like almost 10 years ago, maybe even more, like 2012, 2013, there was this movement, this idea around, Twitter, when it was called Twitter, and in the ed tech space, that you needed to create your
Okay, are you there?
I am. Yeah, that's the thing about tech, Steph and Joe on the go. Sometimes our phones want us to go to. What I was saying was, I think that, times have changed. And, about 10 years ago, this idea of you have to create your own brand, you have to get yourself out there, you have to differentiate yourself from the group, you have to get as many speaking, opportunities as possible. There was this whole idea of you, I. And I'm kind of over that. I'm at that point in my career when I want to work with a team. I want to see what a group of individuals can come up with, not just me sitting alone at my laptop trying to figure things out. I want to be a part of a team. And I have to say, Steph, I have been blessed with such an amazing team in my school district that I never want to go back to I want to stay in the category of we, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and for me, I think when I was in my school district, I was the only instructional technology coach for my grade bands. Like I had others, but they were in different grade bands. So sometimes I was like, well, they don't have the same problems as a middle school or junior high teacher would. But we also had coaches. And I would say that reflecting back, sometimes I felt isolated and sometimes I felt like I have to do all this. I have to do all this. And now that I work in a different area with a team of people that have the same job title as me, it's more of that collaborative thing as well. And I'm looking back and I'm like, it doesn't matter what the job title is. Like, why did I waste so many years of the like me game instead of using other positions, other departments to really collaborate to make implementation even stronger? I know on this podcast, we've talked about initiative fatigue. And again, sometimes when you are like, it's all about me, right? Like my thing, I don't need any help. I can do all this. That sometimes we lose that sight of the other people in different departments. And so I failed at this. And I feel like I've started to grow and reflect and think about how can I make it more of a we thing. And it's hard. It's really hard because sometimes you put in 90% of the work for the group project. And you still got to give that person a little bit of a shout out credit that did 10% of the work, right, Joe?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And sometimes that doesn't feel that great in the moment, right? And that's where that that voice in the back of your head is like, but I did all the work, so I should take the credit. We completely understand that. But to me, a lot of times that feeling is kind of, that seed is sprouted when you're like in high school and you have to do those group projects and you have that kid in class who's not going to do any of the work. And then it kind of spreads over in college when you have to take your undergraduate courses, and it kind of feels the same way. And sometimes that bleeds over into your professional career. But I don't know, Steph. I felt like I was alone on an island for a very long time, and I don't want that. I felt like Tom Hanks on Castaway. And now I feel like I'm a part of a team that, even if I'm doing a lot, even if I do a lot of work, I want to say we did this, because I think when you share that credit with a group, the idea of what you're trying to spread, I think, grows a little bit more because it's a part of something larger than yourself. And your ideas, your hopes for what you're trying to do, I think will blossom even more. So in the long run, giving your team credit, working with the team to get credit, I think it's better for better for the future than if you're just taking sole credit. I don't know. What do you think, Steph?
No, I agree. And it is hard because for my personality or my temperament, one of the things is I like to get credit for my hard work. And so when we're working in a group, sometimes I have to remember to use the language I. And I think it's really clear when you are looking at people who are sharing different things and it's all about me, or they use the language I. I don't think they intentionally do that, right? But it is interesting when you listen to groups share out their work or their ideas and versus we versus I. And just how that comes across to me of like, oh, I don't want to work with that person because it's going to be all about them, right? Like it's not going to be a collaborative project. But if I hear another person and I know they did 90% of the work and they're using the language of we, I'm probably more likely going to say, hey, can we work on this project together? Because I know I'm going to get that credit. I know I'm going to feel like a team player. And it's just really helpful when you are using more of that we language rather than I did this, I did that, I did this, rather than we did this, giving shout outs, this person did this.
Yeah. And, here's the thing. When you use the term we on everything you do and everybody shares the credit, your I don't want to say name, but your reputation gets out there as a great team player, and more people are going to want you on their team, right? And in the long run, working with the team kind of gets you out there more than working by yourself. And just the way people look at you, like, for example, I have a friend who was part of an AI task force in their school district, and they had about 10 people that they would bring together every week and share their research and share what they're doing with AI in the classroom, and they'd help craft kind of some guidelines for the district and recommendations and all of these things. And I would talk to my friend every day and he'd be like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's fantastic. And guess what happened when they released all this stuff? The person that was in charge took credit for all of it. Never mentioned the team, never mentioned the work group, just took credit for everything, saying, I did this, I did that. And I'll tell you, my friend, that entire team was livid. Like, how can you just say you did all this work? And they quit. They said, we don't want to be a part of this task force anymore. Because we received zero validation on the work that we did. And it's a tough feeling when you're working in a group like that and you're providing this support and you're not getting it, you're not even acknowledged, and all that needed to change in that talk track was change I to our team. Our team came up with this. Our team did this. Our team worked together. But, using that word I just creates a very kind of nasty taste in your mouth when you're working with a team and are not even acknowledged in its success.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some strategies for us? Because again, it is hard to move from that I to the we to the, instead of me. How do we move to more of that we culture? What would be your number one step?
Well, number one, since we are at that stage in our career where we can kind of select our partners, I mean, be very mindful of who you are working with. Make sure you're working with individuals who, number one, know what's expected of them. Number two, you know and respect that they will be a collaborative part of the team. And then number three, in all documentation, make sure it says our team. Just, in all documentation, no matter who's creating it, make sure you're saying, hey, this is the language we are going to use throughout the document. Make sure that we are saying our team or we, and setting those expectations up at the very beginning, right? And then creating kind of a timeline of expectations. So people know, like, this is my role, this is what I'm researching, this is what I'm contributing, and they have an expectation of a timeline of when that's going to be completed. I think that can help a team be a we instead of somebody at the last minute going, oh, nobody's getting their work done. I have to do it all. And if I have to do it all, I'm going to use the word I in the final report. That can cause some ruffles as well. So I think sticking to a timeline, selecting the right people, and just being gracious in the process, I think is very important.
Yeah, I love those suggestions. And I even think, like you kind of said it, lead by example, right? Like we need to have those timelines. We need to be open to communication. We need to be actively listening to our teammates. And open communication is sometimes difficult because you have to sometimes be very transparent. And that can feel like you're self-promoting or you're coming out with like, hey, I'm at this step of the project, right? But I think you have to be really intentional with the words that you use when you are kind of collaborating. You also want people to feel comfortable with sharing ideas and concerns without that judgment. And so it's really important to have that communication factor to really listen to people and be that active listener where you're able to kind of paraphrase back to them what they said to you, ask those clarifying questions. And again, sometimes, you have to be transparent about where you're at in the project. Like, hey, I have, already 50 slides from this other thing that I was working on. Do we want to start there? Right? Like thinking about ways that you can offer support to the team without it coming off as like, I'm better than you. I already have this part done. But really considering your language, having that non-judgmental feel, I think can really help build those relationships that we might have.
Oh, my, you nailed it right on the head, Steph, because, I am in that exact same situation, right? Because, our district right now is looking towards utilizing more AI in the classroom and kind of testing things out. But they wanted to make sure everybody kind of had a baseline understanding of what AI was. And so, our coordinator of ed tech, kind of gathered a team together and says, okay, let's put together a presentation that we can present to our district leaders, we can present to our administrators. And I was like, well, I have a slide deck already with about 150 slides. I said, how about we start from this? Like, there's no point in recreating stuff if we have something already made. And that's what we've been using, right? But my team, right, the team I work with, they're adding new slides to it. We are making it our own. And so when we are presenting, I never say this is my slide deck or this is my presentation. It's our team came up with this. Here's our team members. And even if those team members cannot present on that exact day, I still have them listed in the authorship of the slides of the presentation, because I want to have this continued understanding that this is not a singular effort by any one individual. This is a team effort, because it's going to take a team to create this transition, to create this movement. Nobody can do anything by themselves, right? One person can make a difference, but it takes a group to solidify change. And if we just stick with I, we're never going anywhere. The only thing that can make institutional changes is a we. And I want to be a part of a we. I want to be a part of a team that is changing the world. I don't want to be a single individual changing one classroom or one teacher at a time. I want to be a part of a we. And that's what we should strive for.
Yeah. And I think too, I can lead to burnout. Like when I reflect on my career, right? Like you feel energized at the beginning of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push the needle. But it can quickly lead to burnout because all of that responsibility is coming on you. And one thing that you shared in one of our Marco Polo's, Joe, was talking about how adding people to emails. It's such a simple thing, right? Like they didn't attend your meeting. They weren't a part of the conversation in person, but still looping them in because it's like, if I can't help you, hey, maybe these 2 other people can help you. And when you are supporting a lot of educators as an instructional coach or a leader, it can be overwhelming when you start implementing something. It starts off small, but if it's just you, you don't have the capacity to keep going when the numbers keep rising and people need support. So you've got to build up your team because then you have an army of people that are willing to go out and tackle this huge problem together. One of the ways that I love to do this was I teamed up with an ELA coach and we were working on teaching every single classroom how to use Kami. So that way they could annotate. And we had 3 buildings we were trying to tackle. If I was to take all 3 buildings, my entire schedule for probably 3 months would have been filled with just that one lesson to get into every single classroom. But she decided, hey, we're going to do this together. We're going to tackle this as a group. We created the lesson materials together. And so she took 2 building, I took a building, and then we split the other building in half. And so then we were able to go in. Every single student got taught how to annotate using those tools. And again, it wasn't all on me because the first few lessons I would have had so much energy. But by the time I probably got to like classroom 5 or 6, I probably would have been like, this, okay, I'm done. This is boring. This lesson is awful. But we had each other to keep each other accountable and excited about, hey, our students are going to use this tool and this is how we're going to do it. But we also had to have that transparency, which is sometimes difficult, right? Because you don't always know what people are doing. And so, plus it can feel really uncomfortable. And one of my good friends and Joe's good friend, Kat, does a really great job of this. At the end of every meeting, she recaps what we just talked about. And then there's always like a next step. She's like, okay, next, we're going to make a screencast. Next, you're going to create your slides. Next, you're going to do this. Like, so you always know what the outcome is. You always know what the goal for the next meeting or when something is due if you're working on a project with her. So seeing her model some of that has really helped me when it comes to moving from I to we.
You know, I would say that Kat is a machine, but I can't because she is just an amazing human being. And I don't want to call her a machine when she's just an amazing human being. And I'll tell you why she's amazing. She does exactly what you say and more to get a project done or an initiative started. And when the initiative is a success, she never steps out front and says, well, I planned everything. I did this. She is like, our team did so well. I'm proud of our team. She is the epitome of the word we. If you looked up the word we, Kat would be the picture in that dictionary. You know, she's who I want to be when I grow up, right? But that story of what she does, she sees what needs to be done to get to the finish line as a team, and that's her vision. That's her push, and I love it. And I wish more people would model that, because that is exactly how you move from I to we.
Yeah, and you do need a leader, right? Kind of leading the pack, like a Kat. That's like, hey, if we're doing this SmackDown, we need to get this, and this done, right? And so again, having those clear goals, clear outlines, clear next steps can really help people focus in. And then sending them gentle reminders. Hey, just a reminder, I need you to tweet about this. Just a reminder, we're getting on at this time, right? And again, having that clear communication, it can sometimes feel awkward when you're trying to do that with adults because you're like, they should be responsible enough. But sometimes we really do need that recap of like, what did we just talk about in this hour-long meeting? What are my next steps? And so I love how she ends every freaking meeting that I have with her with like, all right, this is kind of what we chatted about. These are our next steps. And I'm always so full with clarity in what I'm supposed to do for that group project that I'm working on with her.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, Steph, I want to also bring up another situation that you have chatted with me about, and that's happened to me as well. It's when somebody contacts you, like let's say like, you know, because you know with at CAMA you have territories, right? But let's say that you meet somebody at a conference, you really hit it off with them, but they're not from your territory, right? And then you get an email from them saying, "Hey, great chatting with you. Yeah, can we set up a meeting so you can talk about CAMI with our district?" Because you are like in that, "Oh, sure, you know, I want to help, absolutely." We might say yes to that, but then that looks to the person whose territory that is as, "Oh, you're not a team player. You're trying to take somebody from my territory," right? That push for us to want to help sometimes creates this false sense of I instead of we. Like for example, you know, my team did a presentation for some vice principals. They're called learning directors, and you know, one of the vice principals presented to their staff about what we presented on, and I got an email from a teacher going, "Oh, my vice principal just presented, and they said that you gave this amazing presentation, and I would love for you to come to my school," and da 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 da. And I could have easily said, "Oh, thanks, you know, it was fun, and yes, I can definitely come." But I saw this teacher was not in my area. She's not from the high school area that I work with. And so I was very gracious. I was like, "Yeah, thank you so much. You know, we're doing a lot of work." I go, "But, you know, let's make sure we keep, you know, so-and-so, the TOSA in their area, you know, in the loop, because I don't want to step on any toes. I don't want to, you know, overstep my bounds." And, you know, I reached out to that person personally saying, "Hey, I just want to let you know, this person from this school reached out to me. I am more than willing to help, but I do not want to overstep my bounds. So I just want to keep you in the loop." Because I could have easily not included that person on my communications, but in the long run, it'll look like I'm trying to take over something that's not mine. And that's not a team player. And I want to make sure that everybody feels that there is transparency in the process and nobody's trying to take over or take credit for something that a team has built.
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard, right? Like, because we were talking about those territories, and when you are working in a, you know, the ed tech field, you do have territories. And so if I have a friend that's in Florida, well, I don't live in Florida. I'm always like, "Hey, do you want to join this call with me? I would love to make the connection with you. I would love to, you know, have this person learn more and have you as a support," right? And so I think it's always important, one, be transparent. Just be open and honest. As soon as they ask you, invite that other person to join in on the conversation. And then once you have them a part of that, invite them, you know, make it like, "Hey, I would love for you to have this conversation and to work alongside and meet my friend that I'm supporting." So yeah, I've had some of those uncomfortable conversations because, again, like before, I never had to worry about that, right? Like I had my own area. I was like good. But then now when you're in this like global atmosphere and you are like active in different communities, people do know you, right? If you are active. And so you just need to be transparent about, "Hey, this person is asking for this. What do you think? How should we handle these next steps?" Get their opinion, share, and be transparent about it. And don't kind of be so awkward about it either. Just kind of be like, "Hey, this is what's happening. This is the next step. What do you guys think about it?"
Yeah, you know, I think the one thing that can solve a lot of problems is open communication, right? You know, a lot of you know, you can't do something in secret and think nobody's going to find out about it. You know, what do they say? You know, a secret can only be kept by, you know, one person, and if the other person is no longer here. So there's no way you can keep a secret, especially in such a group environment as a business or a school. So you have to be open. You cannot, you know, again, going back to that email, I could have so easily kept that other TOSA out of the loop. I could have very easily said, "Yeah, absolutely, let's set up a meeting and see what you need." But I know in the long run what that would do. That would make me look like somebody who's not a team player, and I am a team player. And I wouldn't want that to be done to me. I think it also goes back to a little bit of empathy, right? Like, how would you feel if that happened to you? Well, if you wouldn't feel good, then let's not do that to the other person, And it takes time to understand that, because we are of the mindset of let's help everybody, right? Let's help everybody. But sometimes the best way to help somebody is to bring kind of the person who is closer to that person into the loop. But sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we don't think like that, and it can cause issues down the road.
Yeah, I agree. So you've got to be careful, right? And so again, reflect on where you've gone in your education journey. Are you currently in that I mindset? Are you currently at the we? Have you been in that I place? Where have you been within that educational journey? Because again, it can be really difficult. I mean, I've been there. Joe's been there, where we're kind of like, oh, it's all about me, right? Like, I did all the work. I did this. But no, we've got to sometimes take a step back and really slow down and consider, have we communicated? Have we been transparent? Have we shown all of the different educators different things?
Yeah, and here is a picture of growth. Okay, so I know a lot of us and a lot of our listeners love to collect conference badges, right? We have badges. We have like a badge wall. We do our lanyard hang-ups up on the back wall. I looked at those and I saw those as, you know what? I presented alone at all of those conferences, and I don't want to be alone anymore. I threw all of them away. And I don't want to look at something and go, oh, I did so good, or I loved that. I want to be a part of a team. And if I'm not co-presenting with somebody, I'm not going to keep that badge anymore, because it's not about me. It's about we. And, that was my kind of breakthrough when I threw all those away and said, I'm done with that. I'm done with doing this alone. I want to be a part of a group, and I'm going to start new. And that's what I've done. And not only do I have tons more space on my wall, but I think I've turned a new leaf in that teamwork category.
Yeah, I'm like looking at my conference badges because I have them all hung up, Joe. But for me,
it's common. It's very common. It's very common to have those. You're proud of all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember, when I first got accepted for ISTE, because I think ISTE is really difficult to get into, right? Like, I think the percentages are so low to get into ISTE. And when I first got accepted, I think it was like my third time attending ISTE, I was so excited because I was like, this is so hard to get into this conference and present, right? And I have like my Google Sunnyvale, but sometimes they do remind me of like the connections that I've met as well throughout the way. Like, I have my OMLA and I'm like, oh, I remember this person from that conference, or, I have the ribbons on him. And I just remember like a competition that I had with like all these different educators of who could get the most ribbons. I have friendship bracelets on my lanyards for some of them that Melissa has given me, and Kat. And so sometimes I bring those collaborative reminders for me as well of like, oh, this happened at this conference, and I have all mine hung up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been to so many places.
but I love when you look at it, you don't look at it as your solo presentation. You look at it as the connections you've made to make you a better person, as growth. Yeah, right. That is a very different mindset than I had. So I think when you look at your lanyards, your ribbon wall, you see collaboration. When I looked at it, I looked at it as my own island of ribbons that I didn't feel that way. I mean, of course I have fun at conference. Of course I meet people, but that's not what those ribbons meant to me. That's not why I hung them up. I hung them up as you did a great job presenting at that conference. That's why I hung them up. And I wanted to get out of that mindset, right? So your ribbon wall has a very different viewpoint than my ribbon wall did. So I applaud you for that. When you look at that, you see collaboration. And that means keep adding to that collaboration. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think about what that object is for you, because again, it might not be that ribbon wall. It might be. And if it is, do what Joe did and tear it down. But think about what is it that does keep you isolated? When is it? And I know for me, a lot of times it's when my battery gets low. So when my battery gets low as an educator, I need to just take a step back, rest, take a walk, breathe, and maybe get some rest. Because when my battery is low, I can sometimes be the meanest person to people, and it can be all about me. And so again, think about when your battery gets low, what you need to do to recharge, so it's not all about you. It is about that team. But that's a hard thing as well.
I love it. I love it. We are just wrapping up a very big digital citizenship initiative for this first half of the year. And one of the last lessons we teach kids is, listen to yourself when you're working with partners, when you're working on a device, when you're working on a computer, because sometimes you have these feelings of doubt, of anger, of jealousy, right? And so before you let those feelings overtake you, you need to pause, stop what you're doing, take a breath, look internally and think, why am I feeling this way? Why is this happening? And if you can't figure it out, ask for help. And that's the big thing we tell the kids. Ask for help. Asking for help is not a weakness. Asking for help is a superpower, because it means you have people around you who are willing to help. And I tell you, I have lots of people I can ask for help. I know I can ask you for help. I know I can ask Kat for help. I can ask my friend Roland for help, or Chris for help, or Kyle for help. There's so many people I can ask for help. And that reminds me of how many people I trust and want to work with. And that reminds me why we can do this together. We can get through this. And usually my anxiety and my frustrations and everything kind of starts melting away, because you don't have to do it alone. And one of my favorite things is teaching is a collaborative sport. And if you're doing it alone, you're doing it wrong. So get your team, find your squadron, and work together, because we can get through anything together. It's when I do it alone is when you can fail. And we just got to keep moving forward as a group. And that's the only way we're going to change the world, together.
Yeah. And we have a lot of reflecting to do. So we gave you a lot to think about, a lot to reflect on. And so just kind of think about it. Feel free to reach out to one of us if you're kind of struggling, like, oh my gosh, I'm in that I mindset, right? Like, you're not going to be judged. We've been there. We've been there, and we're happy to kind of support you or listen to you, whatever you need. But again, think about, what is it that you really need as your next step? Do you need to recharge? Do you need to, get uncomfortable and be more clear on your expectations when you're working with a group? Do you need to, ask somebody maybe to present with you at a conference instead of always just putting in a session solo? So think about what your next step is. And thanks for listening. We're about to hit that season.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. And if you're like me, we are looking forward to our glorious winter break. So take that time to recharge, revitalize, step away from the device if you need to, hang out with friends and family, and just be joyous, knowing that we are moving in the right direction together. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks for making this podcast so fun, Steph. And I cannot wait to see what 2025 brings.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thanks.